The sea stretched endlessly before the silver serenity. My private yacht, its hull cutting through the waves like a blade through silk. At 70, I, Margaret Elaine Harper, stood at the helm, the wind tugging at my silver hair, my heart steady despite the storm brewing in my thoughts. The horizon glowed with the amber hues of a Caribbean sunset, but my mind was far from the tranquility before me. It was anchored to a single, venomous phrase my daughter-in-law, Claire, had spat at me 2 weeks ago. "You'll ruin our cruise." "Margaret, you always do." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they were a calculated jab at my place in the family. I'd built a fortune from no thinga real estate empire that spanned 3 continents, yet to Claire, I was just a meddling old woman, a liability to her perfect vacation plans. My son, David, hadn't defended me. He'd stood there, silent, as Claire's voice dripped with disdain. That silence hurt more than her words. I gripped the yacht's railing, the cool metal grounding me. This wasn't about a cruise. It was about respect to the lack of it. Claire had crossed a line, and I wasn't one to let such things slide. Not anymore. I'd spent decades clawing my way up, outsmarting men who thought a woman couldn't play their game. If Claire thought she could dismiss me, she was about to learn a lesson in consequences. The idea had come to me the night after our argument, as I sat in my Manhattan penthouse, sipping a glass of aged scotch. Claire and David were planning their lavish Cruiseo week-long escape to the Bahamas, funded partly by the trust I'd set up for David. They'd invited me, begrudgingly, only because they thought I'd decline. But Claire's comment wasn't just about my presence. It was a power play, a way to remind me I was no longer the matriarch who called the shots. I decided then that if she thought I'd ruin her cruise, I'd give her something far worse to worry about. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want to destroy their lives, just their complacency. So, I devised a plan. Not one of petty revenge, but a calculated move to remind them who I was. I'd spent years building my wealth, and with it came connections, bankers, lawyers, even a few less savory types who knew how to pull strings. Claire's financial recklessness was no secret. She'd racked up credit card debt, leaning on David's trust fund to bail her out. A few calls, a favor or two, and I could make her credit score plummet without ever touching their bank accounts. It was clean, precise, and perfectly legal. I turned to my assistant, Lila, who stood nearby, her tablet glowing with the day's reports. "Lila," I said, my voice calm but firm, "have we heard back from Mr. Grayson?" Lila nodded, her eyes sharp. "He confirmed this morning, ma'am. The accounts are flagged. By tomorrow, Claire's credit score will reflect significant discrepancies." I smiled. A small, private thing. Good. And the yacht's course? Set for Nassau. We'll arrive by dawn. The plan was simple. While Claire and David basked in their cruise's luxury, oblivious, I'd be on my yacht, orchestrating a financial wake-up call. I wasn't heartless. I'd ensure David's trust remained untouched. But Claire's personal accounts, those were fair game. A ruined credit score would mean no more impulsive spending, no more designer bags charged to cards she couldn't pay off. It was a lesson in humility, one she desperately needed. As the stars began to prick the sky, I thought back to how this all began. My life hadn't always been private yachts and penthouses. I'd grown up in a small Ohio town, daughter of a factory worker and a schoolteacher. Money was tight, dreams were small, and ambition was a luxury I couldn't afford until I decided I would. At 20, I left home with nothing but a suitcase and a stubborn streak. I worked odd jobs, saved every penny, and taught myself the real estate game. By 30, I'd flipped my first property. By 50, I was a multi-millionaire. Every deal, every handshake, Every late night poring over contracts had built me into the woman I was now. David was my only child, born when I was 40. A miracle after years of thinking motherhood wasn't in my cards. I'd given him everything: love, education, opportunities, but I'd also raised him to be independent. Or so I thought. Claire entered his life 5 years ago, all charm and ambition. And slowly, I watched my son fade into her shadow. She wasn't evil, just selfish. And David's silence during her outbursts told me he'd let her take the reins. The yacht hummed beneath my feet, a reminder of my power, my independence. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing it to remind them that I wasn't invisible. That night, as I retired to my cabin, the ocean's rhythm lulling me, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I going too far? But then I remembered Claire's sneer, David's averted eyes, and the doubt vanished. They'd thank me one day or they wouldn't. Either way, I'd sleep just fine. The next morning, Nassau's shores came into view, a glittering strip of sand and palm trees. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Grayson. It's done. Credit score updated. Awaiting further instructions. I set the phone down, my heart steady. The game had begun. The Silver Serenity docked in Nassau's bustling port, the air thick with salt and the chatter of tourists. I stepped onto the deck, my white linen dress catching the breeze, and surveyed the scene. Cruise ships loomed nearby, their massive hulls dwarfing my yacht. But I felt no envy. My vessel was a statement of freedom, not just wealth. Somewhere on one of those floating cities, Claire and David were sipping cocktails, unaware of the storm I'd unleashed. I hadn't always been this calculating. There was a time when I'd have let Claire's words slide, chalked them up to youth or insecurity. But at 70, I'd learned that silence in the face of disrespect only breeds more of it. Claire's comment wasn't just a jab. It was a declaration that I was irrelevant, a relic to be tolerated. She'd misjudged me, and now she'd face the consequences. Lila approached, her tablet in hand. Ma'am, the cruise ship they're on the ocean's Julie's docked 2 piers over. Their itinerary includes a shore excursion today. Should we monitor their movements? I considered it. Tracking them would be easy. I had the resources. But this wasn't about spying. It was about teaching a lesson from afar. No, I said. Let them enjoy their day. They'll feel the impact soon enough. I spent the morning in Nassau, strolling through the straw market. The vibrant colors and lively vendors a stark contrast to the cold precision of my plan. I bought a woven hat, more out of habit than need, and let the sun warm my skin. For a moment, I was just Margaret, not the mogul or the wronged mother-in-law. But the moment passed, and my resolve hardened. Back on the yacht, I reviewed the details with Lila. Mr. Grayson, my contact at the bank, had worked swiftly. Claire's credit cards maxed out from her spending sprees had been flagged for suspicious activity. A few strategic moves, and her credit score had tanked from a respectable 720 to a dismal 480. It wasn't permanent. She could recover, but not without effort. The point wasn't to ruin her life, but to force her to confront her recklessness. David, insulated by the trust, wouldn't be touched financially, but I knew Claire's pride would take the hit. As the afternoon sun climbed, I sat in the yacht's lounge, a glass of iced tea in hand. My thoughts drifted to David. My son, once so full of fire, had become passive, letting Claire steer their marriage. I'd raised him to be strong, but love had a way of softening even the sharpest edges. I didn't blame him entirely. Claire was persuasive, her charm a weapon, but his silence during her outburst had cut deep. This wasn't just about Claire. It was about reminding David who he was, who we were. The phone rang, shattering my thoughts. It was David. I hesitated, then answered. My voice cool but steady. Hello, David. Mom, he said, his tone tight. Claire's freaking out. Her credit card was declined at a shop here in Nassau. What's going on? I leaned back, the leather chair creaking softly. Declined. That's unfortunate. Perhaps she should check her statements. Mom, don't play games. Did you do something? The accusation stung, but I kept my voice even. David, I'm on my yacht, enjoying my vacation. I don't control Claire's spending habits. He sighed, frustration crackling through the line. She says it's not just one card. All of them. And her credit score gets tanked. She got an alert. I raised an eyebrow, though he couldn't see it. Sounds like she's been careless. You know how these things happen. Mom, please. If you know something, I know you didn't stand up for me when she said I'd ruin your cruise. I cut in, my voice sharp now. I know you let her treat me like I'm nothing. Maybe this is a chance for both of you to reflect. Silence hung between us. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost pleading. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to let it go that far. I closed my eyes, the weight of his apology settling over me. I know, David, but actions have consequences. For all of us. I hung up, my heart heavy but resolute. This wasn't about punishment. It was about accountability. Claire's financial mess was her own making, exacerbated by my nudge. David's silence had been his choice, and now they'd both have to face the fallout. That evening, as the yacht sailed toward our next destination, I stood on the deck, the stars above mirroring the lights of Nassau's skyline. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I wasn't ashamed either. I'd spent my life building something from nothing, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even family, diminish that. Claire's credit score would recover, but her respect for me, that was the real test. The silver Serenity glided through the night, its engines a low hum against the ocean's whisper. I sat in my cabin, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across the mahogany walls. David's call had stirred something in minute guilt, but a nagging sense of unfinished business. My plan had worked flawlessly, yet the victory felt hollow. Claire's credit score was in shambles. But would it change her? Would it make David see the strength I'd tried to instill in him? I opened my laptop, pulling up the latest report from Mr. Grayson. Claire's accounts were frozen, her credit score a scarlet letter in the financial world. She tried to book a spa day on the cruise, only to be humiliated when her card was declined again. I imagined her face flushed with anger, those perfectly manicured nails tapping furiously as she called her bank. It was petty to savor the image, but I did, just for a moment. Lila knocked softly before entering. Ma'am, there's an email from David. He's asking to meet tomorrow when we dock in Freeport. I nodded, closing the laptop. Tell him I'll be at the Coral Cafe at noon. Just him, not Claire. She hesitated. He mentioned she's upset. She's blaming you. Of course she is, I said, a wry smile tugging at my lips. Let her. She'll learn soon enough that blame doesn't fix anything. Lila left, and I leaned back, my thoughts drifting to the past. David was 10 when I closed my first $1 million deal. I come home late, exhausted but triumphant, and found him waiting up, a math textbook open on the kitchen table. Mom, he'd said, eyes wide. Are we rich now? I'd laughed, ruffling his hair. We're getting there, kid. But it's not about the money. It's about never letting anyone tell you what you can't do. He'd nodded, soaking up my words. Where had that boy gone? The next morning, Freeport's vibrant docks greeted us, the air alive with the scent of grilled fish and the chatter of vendors. I dressed carefully white slacks, a silk blouse, and the woven hat from Nassau. The Coral Cafe was a quaint spot, its outdoor tables shaded by palms. David was already there when I arrived, his face drawn, his eyes searching mine as I sat down. "Mom," he began, his voice low. "Claire's a mess. She can't book anything. Can't even buy souvenirs. She thinks you did this." I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. "And what do you think, David?" He looked away, his jaw tight. I think you're capable of it. You've always been strategic." I laughed softly, the sound brittle. "Strategic? That's a kind way to put it. Tell me, why didn't you say anything when she called me a burden?" He flinched, and for a moment, I saw the boy who'd waited up for me, eager for my approval. "I should have," he said finally. "I was caught off guard. She's been stressed, and I didn't want to make it worse." "Stressed?" I repeated, my voice flat. "David, I built everything you have. That trust fund, this lifestyle didn't come from her. It came from me. And she thinks she can dismiss me." He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "She was wrong, Mom. I know that. But this whatever you did, it's hitting her hard. She's talking about lawyers." I raised an eyebrow. "Lawyers? For what? I haven't touched her money. Her credit score dropped because of her own choices. I just accelerated the process." His eyes widened. "So you did do it?" I didn't answer, just held his gaze. Let him draw his own conclusions. After a moment, he sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. Can you fix this? For me?" The plea tugged at me, but I shook my head. "This isn't about you, David. It's about respect. Claire needs to learn it. And you need to remember who you are. Fix it yourself. Talk to her. Be the man I raised." He stared at me, a mix of frustration and understanding in his eyes. "I'll try," he said finally. "But she's not going to let this go." "Then she'll learn the hard way," I replied, standing. "I'm not the villain here, David. I'm just done being invisible." As I walked back to the yacht, the weight of our conversation settled over me. I'd won this round, but the game wasn't over. Claire's anger would grow, and David's loyalty would be tested. For the first time, I wondered if I'd underestimated him or overestimated him. The silver Serenity sailed toward Eleuthera, the ocean a mirror of the sky's deepening blue. I stood on the deck, a glass of wine in hand, the weight of David's words lingering. He'd asked me to fix Claire's mess, but I'd refused not out of spite, but because some lessons had to be learned the hard way. I wasn't heartless. I'd ensure the damage wasn't permanent. But Claire needed to feel the sting of her own recklessness before she could grow. Lila joined me, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. "Ma'am, Claire's been active on social media. She posted about her credit issues, hinting at family interference. It's gaining traction." I raised an eyebrow. Let her vent. Public tantrums won't change facts. Lila hesitated. "Some of her followers are speculating about you. They know you're influential." I smirked. "Influential? That's one way to put it. Keep an eye on it, but don't engage. She's digging her own hole." As Lila left, I thought about Claire's post. She was trying to rally sympathy, painting me as the villain. It was a bold move, but foolish. She didn't know the full extent of my network friends in high places who could quash rumors or amplify them, depending on my mood. For now, I'd let her stew. The internet's attention span was short, and I had bigger plans. That afternoon, I called Mr. Grayson. "Can we pause the flags on Claire's accounts?" I asked. "Just for a week." Let her think it's over. Of course. Mrs. Harper. I'll handle it. Anything else? Monitor her spending. If she goes back to her old habits, let me know. I hung up, satisfied. A brief reprieve would give Claire a false sense of security, make her believe she'd dodged the bullet. It would also test David. Would he use this chance to talk to her, to set boundaries, or would he let her spiral again? As the yacht anchored off Eleuthera's pink sand beaches, I took a tender to shore, craving solitude. The island was a slice of paradise, its turquoise waters lapping at the shore. I walked barefoot, the sand warm beneath my feet, and let my thoughts wander. I remembered my early days in real estate, the men who'd laughed at my ambition, the banks that had turned me away. I'd fought for every inch of my success, and I'd never apologized for it. Why should I now? Yet, a part of me ached for David. He was caught between his mother and his wife, a position I'd never wanted for him. I'd raised him to be decisive, but love had blurred his edges. Claire's influence was strong, but so was mine. The question was whose would win. That evening, I received a text from David. Claire thinks it's fixed. She's booking things again. Mom, please don't escalate this. I didn't reply. Escalation wasn't my goal, growth was. But if Claire reverted to her old ways, I'd be ready. The next day, I met with an old friend, Carla, a retired banker who lived on Eleuthera. Over lunch at a seaside cafe, I shared the situation, omitting the specifics of my plan. Carla, sharp as ever at 65, leaned back, her eyes gleaming. Margaret, you're playing a dangerous game. Family's tricky. You sure this won't push David away? I swirled my wine, considering. If it does, it's his choice. I'm not forcing him to pick sides. I'm just reminding him who I am. Carla nodded. Fair enough. But watch Claire. She's young, but she's not stupid. She might hit back. I laughed, the sound carrying over the waves. Let her try? I've faced worse. As I returned to the yacht, Carla's warning lingered. Claire wasn't my equal in resources, but she had youth, charisma, and a knack for manipulation. I'd underestimated opponents before and regretted it. This time, I'd be ready. That night, as the yacht rocked gently, I reviewed Lila's latest report. Claire had indeed started spending against small purchases, testing the waters. I smiled. She thought she'd won. Let her. The real lesson was still coming. The Silver Serenity charted a course back toward Nassau. The journey a loop mirroring my own thoughts, circling, assessing, recalibrating. Claire's brief reprieve was nearing its end. Mr. Grayson had confirmed her spending was creeping up again, her confidence returning too quickly. She hadn't learned a thing. I leaned against the yacht's railing, the night air cool, and felt a pang of disappointment. Not for her, but for David. He hadn't stepped up, hadn't curbed her recklessness. I'd hoped he would. Lila approached, her tablet glowing. Ma'am, Claire's made 3 large purchases to dye a designer bag, a spa package, and a deposit for a future trip. She's back to her old patterns. I nodded, unsurprised. Reinstate the flags tomorrow. Let's see how she handles round 2. Lila hesitated. David called again. He's worried. Says Claire's talking about hiring a private investigator to look into you. I laughed, the sound sharp against the waves. A private investigator. She's more dramatic than I thought. Let her waste her money. But as Lila left, I felt a flicker of unease. Claire's desperation was growing, and desperate people were unpredictable. I'd built my empire by anticipating moves, but family was messier than business. I couldn't control David's choices, and Claire's unpredictability was a wild card. The next morning, as we neared Nassau, I received an unexpected call, not from David, but from Claire herself. I stared at the screen, her name glaring back at me. Curiosity won, and I answered. "Margaret," she said, her voice tight, barely controlled. "I know it was you. The credit cards, the score, everything. You're trying to ruin me." I kept my tone calm, almost bored. "Claire, I don't control your spending. If your cards are declined, maybe look at your own choices. Don't play innocent," she snapped. "David told me you admitted it. You're punishing me because I hurt your feelings. That's pathetic." Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. Pathetic? Claire, I've built a life you can only dream of. You think I'm threatened by you? I'm teaching you something your parents clearly didn't: accountability. She laughed, bitter and sharp. Accountability. You're a vindictive old woman hiding behind your money. I'll find a way to fix this, and you'll regret it. The line went dead. I set the phone down, my pulse steady but my mind racing. Claire wasn't backing down. She was fighting back, and while I admired her nerve, it changed nothing. I'd faced bigger threats than an angry daughter-in-law. That afternoon, I met with Mr. Grayson via video call. "She's digging," I said. "Can we protect the trust if she pushes legally?" He nodded, his face calm. "The trust is ironclad. Mrs. Harper. David's secure. Claire's personal accounts. Thuft's got no leverage there. You've done nothing illegal." "Good," I said. "Keep me posted." As the yacht docked in Nassau again, I felt the weight of the game shifting. Claire's call had been a declaration of war, and I wasn't naive enough to think she'd stop at threats. I needed to stay ahead, but I also needed to consider David. He was caught in the crossfire, and while I wanted to shake him awake, I didn't want to lose him. That evening, I invited David to the yacht. He arrived alone, his face weary. "Mom, Claire's furious. She's talking about lawsuits, investigators, everything. Can you just stop?" I studied him, my heart aching. "David, this isn't about stopping. It's about you deciding who you are. Are you her doormat? Or are you my son?" He looked away, his hands clenched. "I love her, Mom. But I know she was wrong. I don't know how to fix this." "Then start by being honest," I said softly. "With her. With yourself. I'll lift the flags on her accounts. But only if you both sit down with me. No more games." He nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. "Okay. I'll talk to her." As he left, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe this wasn't about winning or losing. Maybe it was about rebuilding something stronger. The Silver Serenity lay anchored off Nassau's coast, the city's lights twinkling like stars against the night. Tomorrow, David and Claire would meet me here, on my terms, on my yacht. I'd promised to lift the flags on Claire's accounts. But this wasn't surrender, it was strategy. I'd pushed them to the edge, and now it was time to see if they'd learn or lash out. I sat in the yacht's dining room, a spread of seafood and wine before me. But my appetite was for resolution. Lila joined me, her tablet dark for once. "Ma'am." David confirmed the meeting. "Noon tomorrow." Claire's reluctant, but she's coming. "Good," I said, swirling my wine. "Let's make sure everything's ready. No surprises." As Lila left, I thought back over the week. I'd set out to teach Claire a lesson, to remind her I wasn't invisible. I'd succeeded, her credit score was a wreck, her pride bruised, but the cost was David's trust. Frayed, if not broken. I didn't regret my actions, but I regretted the distance they'd created. This meeting was my chance to bridge it, or to lose him for good. The next morning, I dressed with Korea-tailored blazer. Pearls. A nod to the matriarch I was. The dining room was set with coffee, pastries, and a view of the ocean that could soften even the hardest hearts. When David and Claire arrived, the air was thick with tension. Claire's eyes were cold, her jaw set, but David looked nervous, hopeful. Sit, I said, gesturing to the table. They did. Claire's posture rigid, David's uncertain. Margaret, Claire began, her voice sharp. If you think I'm here to grovel. I don't. I interrupted, my tone calm but firm. You're here because I'm offering to fix your accounts. But first, we talk. She scoffed, but David touched her arm. Claire, please, let's hear her out. I leaned forward, my eyes on Claire. You called me a burden. Said I'd ruin your cruise. But this isn't about a vacation. It's about respect. I built everything David has. Everything you enjoy. You don't get to dismiss me. Claire's eyes flashed, but she stayed silent. I turned to David. And you let her. I raised you to stand up, not to stand by. David flinched, his voice low. I know, Mom. I messed up. I'm sorry. Claire's gaze softened, just slightly. I shouldn't have said that, she admitted, her words reluctant. But what you did tanking my credit, that was cruel. Cruel, I echoed. I didn't touch your money. I exposed your recklessness. You've been spending beyond your means, leaning on David's trust. I gave you a wake-up call. She bristled, but David nodded. She's right. Claire, we've been careless. Both of us. The admission hung in the air, a fragile bridge between us. I leaned back, my voice softer. I've already told Mr. Grayson to lift the flags. Your accounts will be clear by tomorrow. But this stops here. No more games. From any of us. Claire's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Fine. No more games. David reached for my hand, his grip warm. Thank you, Mom, for everything. As they left, I stood on the deck, the ocean stretching before me. I'd won. In a way, Claire had backed down. David had found his voice. But the real victory was the understanding we'd reached. However tentative, I wasn't invisible anymore. And neither was the strength I'd passed to my son. The silver serenity sailed on, its course steady. So was I.